All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be an awesome podcast today. The woman that I have joining with me is actually a part of the story for SFS and the MIA. To be honest, without her, I'm not sure if we would exist in our current format because she kind of took a chance on us early on. She was a gym owner in the community. A friend of mine, reached out to her and talked to me and basically said, hey, I know this woman that owns a gym and she might be interested in bringing in martial arts to the academy. Long story short, we were next to her fitness facility for multiple years and now we're in our current location. So she's a part of our story. It's going to be an awesome podcast today. I want to, make sure to give thanks to VetLife. They've stood by us and they're continuing to sponsor us here. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit, and it's a company of veterans for veterans. Pretty much everybody in life knows a veteran that's been on active duty that's had to come back and transition back to normal society. And that's a very difficult prospect for many people. So VetLife's there to ease that transition. They're there to help you, get back your feeling of brotherhood, your feeling of community, your feeling of camaraderie, and help you get the benefits that you're entitled to from your time served. So you can feel free to reach out to VetLife on Instagram, reach out to them on Facebook, or the simplest way is just their website of vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, I'm joined today by Heather Spitler. And for the people that don't know you, Heather, just talk a little bit about your background. Like, were you born and raised in Michigan? And let's kind of build your story.
Yes, born and raised in Michigan, Battle Creek, actually. Lived there till I was about 10, and then my parents found some property north, about 45 acres, which we were the small farm out there. Everybody else had a couple hundred around us or more. Dad was talked into getting a couple horses, and so we had I consider it a gentleman farm out there. Went to school at Hastings High School, bussed in because we were so far out in the country. Where I lived, if somebody drove down your road, you kind of looked and were like, I don't know if I know that car. It was an amazing place for me personally to grow up. The freedom of going out in the field, getting lost, going down the stream, it was wonderful. Quite a gift, I think, from my parents. Lived in Grand Rapids for a little bit after I graduated high school with my sister while she finished school at Kendall. And then went back to Battle Creek and went to KCC for the first part.
So I got introduced to you through a man named Mike Wojo. You were running a Total Fitness Center in Howell.
Yes.
And you and your husband, Todd Spitler, at the time were running Total Fitness. Yeah. And basically you and I had lunch one day. I think we met at Applebee's in town.
We did. Yes, we did.
We sat down and we discussed the prospect of this little scorpion fighting system, bringing our martial arts academy alongside Total Fitness Center. And you kind of took a chance on us. You brought us in. Yep. You and your husband actually brought me into Brighton Ford a couple times. We had a bunch of business meetings. We kind of game planned. Yeah. And it's funny, we were kind of dreaming about the current facility that exists. Remember we said one day it would be a mega facility where it's,
the space was so small. You knew you were limited, especially for what you wanted to be. It wasn't big enough to have an actual ring in there or the multiple entities that you've brought into this facility, which is amazing.
But we were producing a couple professional athletes and stuff right there out of Howell. It's pretty incredible stuff. But so let's fast forward let's talk a little bit about your professional life and your career life. So what was your first start into business? And then, what was your first job? And then you ended up being, a part owner of Brighton Ford.
Yes.
I've known that you worked with the Chamber of Commerce in town. You've held many, many titles. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Many hats. The most important one for me was mom. But to go back in at my very first job, besides babysitting, which was tough out in the country, even tougher was selling Avon by bicycle down the dirt roads. My mom was a good sport on delivery days. It was just something she allowed me to, try.
What
I think I was
American
12
story.
or 13 or something. It was pretty funny. But did that. Worked in various horse barns. Actually, one of the favorite jobs that I ever had was as soon as I was 16 and can drive, there was a gentleman that lived across the property, Mr. Madigan, and he had foxhounds, and he hired me to work in the kennel. And I've always been an animal nut anyway. And then we'd go fox hunting on the weekends, which for all, those concerned, never caught a fox, actually never saw one. It was just the hounds would get on a line, you follow the hounds, and it was really cool. But so that was one of my paid positions, along with cleaning stalls at another horse barn that was down the road.
So very humble beginnings. I mean, you started just like living the good old classic
work.
American story. You
It's
get out
called
there.
work, that four-letter word that I like. I like a lot of four-letter words, but that one in particular. And it was just, I had a horse, but I was responsible for, putting the shoes on it. Well, that was expensive. I think it was maybe $25 at the time. But for me, it was a lot of money. We did our own hay, off the back. And so there was, it was work, and never been afraid of it. And, it's...
So then at that point, like I said, I got to introduce you as already ultra successful. You and your husband ran Brighton Ford together. I knew you were heavily involved in the community. Mm-hmm. You had a lot of business ventures. You have a successful family. When I met you, you're really conquering the world. You're one of the people in this environment that's crushing it.
Which is funny because I never view myself as that. It was just, I'm me doing what I got to do to bring whatever's next in life. And so... even when, you were like, do you want to do the podcast? I'm like, okay, I don't know what to talk to me about, but we can talk. I'm pretty good at it, as my son pointed out to me yesterday. But
shout out to Jake, by the way. Today's his birthday.
It is.
What
Happy
a coincidence.
Birthday, Jake. Yeah.
What a coincidence that the day that you're sitting here with me to tell your story, it's Jake's birthday.
26 years ago.
Happy birthday, Jake.
Yay. Yeah, so it just... to hear myself described that way is, I don't want to say uncomfortable, but it's kind of like, well, I mean, again, I'm just me. I never put a title. I always tell the boys, so what? That person, yes, very successful, but they put their pants on the same way every day. It just, you are who you are, and you don't put titles on it, and you don't put, nuances. It just, to me, it was, we were just working on running the gym. And we did have Brighton Ford, and our thought process behind me getting in, and now I never had a paid job at the dealership or any of that, but whatever was needed is when you step up. But that's the way I was raised also. And so when Todd and I were looking at how we could get more involved with the community, that was my aspect of it, is putting back. We make a living off the community, let's put back into it, and how can I step up? And Rotary was probably the first. And then, just any event that we could help out with, or even the high school and putting back into the community was what we found important.
So let's take us back because Todd was a massive part of your life. Before our podcast, we were talking. I mean, you were together for 33 years. I turned 33 this month.
That's crazy.
Later this month, I become 33. You were with that man for 33 years of your life. Yeah. Take us back to the start. How did you two meet? And then, like I said, you progressed through the business world together, Lord. So that I met you at a point where you're already like some of the upper echelon people around here succeeding. Tell us that story.
So I was sitting in the library at Kellogg Community College with a group of my friends, and we're chatting away, and because, we weren't too awful serious at the time. And a couple tables over, there was a guy sitting there doing his homework, and we were apparently a little too loud, because the guy stands up and he takes his pencil and he sets it down, and he looks at us, and we're all kind of, I guess we're being kind of, this is a library. All right, guys, we'll disband. We'll get out of here. And then, I don't know, it was later that week, I needed to study for a test, and so I got into the library, and there was, the only open table was a six-top. Todd was actually sitting in the far corner, and so I kind of went up, I said, are you expecting anybody else? Can I sit down? He's like, no, yeah, go ahead, sit down. And so I'm actually trying to study this time. But I can see out of my vision that he kind of keeps looking up and looking over, and I'm like, no, I'm studying, I don't have anything. A mutual friend of ours came over and sat down, Tony, and he goes, I didn't know you two knew each other. And we were like, we don't. Hi, how you doing? He introduced us. So we get to talking, and he's like, hey, my dad has a couple horses, at this one place if you want to ride. And I was like, well, there's a line I've not heard, but yeah, and he's like, here's my business card, give me a call. And I'm like, I don't call guys, but yeah, nice try. Well, he ends up showing up at my business, I worked at Video Library in Battle Creek, and before Blockbuster, and he showed up to look at a VCR, because that's where you could only buy a VCR back in the day, was at a specific store.
Wow.
I know, you can just go to Walmart for one.
Or Amazon for anything in the world now.
No. You had to go to the video store or whoever was selling them. And then we ended up riding horses afterwards. And I always laughed because he always said, he remembered the point when he fell in love with me. And I was like, really, what was that? Well, we were riding horses, and my mare wouldn't cross this bridge. And I grew up riding, and I'm like, oh, you're going to cross this bridge. Let's figure this out together. So I'm jumping down, and he's like, there's mud all underneath there. You'll get your tennis shoes wet and muddy. And they were not appropriate riding shoes, mind you. And I go, they'll wash. And he went, oh. So, yeah, no, I grew up on a farm, never been a, problem with getting dirty. So that's what he always said was his moment that he fell in love. And so, yeah, we started, we were inseparable, and then he ended up going to Ferris. And then from there, when he graduated hotel restaurant management, he went to do an internship in Chicago. And that's when I ran out of money for school. This was before grants and loans and all that kind of jazz. And I was at Michigan State in the animal science program, working towards vet. And so I just went to Chicago with him, and we were there for a couple of years. And then when we came back here, we opened up a restaurant down in Redford. T.S. Martin's was the name of it. And we were there for 4 years until I got pregnant with Jake. And then it was like, I just don't want to raise him in a bar. It's just not going to happen. I was front of the house. Todd was back of the house. So it was, pretty set team, and to take one out of the equation. And so that's when we sold the restaurant. And then he started selling cars at Brighton Ford. And I stayed home for the first time in my life. So,
Gotcha. So you were in young, full of life in Chicago, taking on the world. That had to be exciting.
It was a blast.
It's funny. I just had Ramsdell on the podcast a couple days ago, and he did the same thing. Like right out of college, he moved to Chicago. It was a go city, and he said some of the best times of his life. Right before he came back and started his chapter. It almost sounds like identical to that story.
Yeah. Met some amazing people, and it was just. But then I hit a point where I was like, I'm ready to go home. I'm done. It's you
100%.
You realize the amount of tension just from the noise pollution that you are going to end up experiencing, and it was interesting.
100%. So then you come back home, you're starting your family. Todd's at Brighton Ford, works his way all the way up through Brighton Ford, and he becomes the co-owner of it, right? With his
general manager first, yep. And then there was a point in time where his dad had. They all split up the shares, and so then he was 50% owner.
That's awesome. So now he's running one of the most successful dealers in the area. You guys are on top of the world. You've got a great family. I've been to your home, absolutely, gorgeous home.
Thank you.
Everything's going extremely well. So really, you've experienced, beautiful times in life. I'm sure you travel all around the world at that point. You see great things. But then you had extreme tragedy hit, which is something that you're now. It's like a part of your identity forever. And
it will be, yeah, and it is. And I have always been, why am I going through what I'm going through? Not a why me, but try to look back and get perspective as to what it is I need to learn from where I'm at, and what we'd gone through, what I've been through the last couple of years. Actually, that it was the 2-year anniversary. How can I help? How can I get word out? How can I help somebody else not go through what I've gone through? And so for me, talking about it has been part of my healing. If I know I've touched or helped somebody, then that has been, those are big points. On September 4th, 2018 is when I was actually at 100 women at the 242 church. I had just walked in and was, checking things out, talking to a few people. And I got a phone call saying, you need to get down here right away. It's like, and in the tone of the voice of the person that called me, I knew this was serious. So I jumped in the car, and as I'm going down, there's a police officer that's right in front of me. And I called her back, and I go, is the police officer coming to the dealership? And she goes, I don't know, it could be, you just need to get here. So I did. The police officer pulled right up. I got up behind him, obviously knowing where I was going. I snaked up the stairs, and when I came around the corner, what I saw was a EMT holding my husband's head. I thought that he had fallen and that he was supporting his neck. He was still breathing. I was honestly waiting for him just to open his eyes and go, man, I fucked up. And I'm like, and it wasn't. What had happened is he had shot himself at work. It was 5 o'clock on the 4th. And life from there spiraled. And in a way that I never, ever thought was on my path, ever.
100%. You just can't picture these things. So, I mean, suicide has rocked my life extremely hard too. I lost my mother to suicide, and then I don't know if you know this, but I was dating a woman for 2.5 years before I was moved here to Michigan, and we tried to make long distance relationship work. You know, young kids, we thought we're madly in love, and she hung herself.
Oh,
and
I didn't know that.
no, I don't really go into it too much with a lot of people, but it's just like the hopelessness feeling that suicide brings, because there's just all of your desires, which are one more moment with someone, one more conversation, what could I have done, all of those things, you're hopeless. You're helpless.
Yeah.
There's nothing that you can do to reverse that moment in time that's already taken place.
No, and I've often said I had read the word despair before, but I didn't understand it till that moment. And you don't understand the weight of grief and how heavy it is on your heart. I mean, it is a weight.
100%.
And it to stand there and all of a sudden realize what it is that you're feeling, you know, and it was just, you know, hang on life. I just want to go stand in the corner for a minute. I'll be right back. But, you know, I just want to escape this feeling, and there is no way to escape it. And you can't get around it. You have to go through it. And you have to allow and honor where you're at. And it's not going to be pretty, and it isn't pretty, and that's okay. When you hit rock bottom, it gives you a good foundation to push off. You're not going to push off right away. You're going to have to roll with it. And that was part of my past learning. I had done a lot of energy work. I had studied Kabbalah, non-denominational, for 3 years with some amazing women down in Ann Arbor. And it really, I didn't understand then why I was doing it, but that to me gave me the foundation to regroup, be aware, honor, and just get through it. Are you ever through it? Totally? No. It softens. But you kind of hit a point where I've talked to people before, and you hit a point where you get caught in the waves and you get pulled out in the undertow. But until you decide to ride the wave and step off onto the beach, it's a conscious decision. Timing is different for everybody. The method to healing is different for everybody. For me, it was movement, it was talking, it was the constant movement of forward. And my other thing is when people go, well, happiness is a choice. Bullshit. You know, it's like, yes, my thought is the pursuit of happiness is a choice. You don't wake up and go, okay, I'm happy today. No, because to me, that's not honoring where it's at, and you're pushing down any emotion that you have. When you push an emotion down, you're putting it into your body. Where in your body are you putting it? Generally in your heart when you mourn. Lungs, heart. I ended up with pneumonia in January afterward, you know, and I've never had pneumonia. I've never been that sick in my life. You know, talking with, when I was talking with Mary said she's never met a woman who's lost her husband that hasn't gotten pneumonia, because you're shallow breathing, the sadness is so heavy. And I hit to a point where I was like, I need to move the energy. And that's when I saw it outside, whether it be massage with somebody that does energetic work, or another thing called Feldenkrais that helps, again, it's energy movement. It's tied in with Tai Chi, the gal that I went to. And it's just, but it's a conscious effort to heal. And to me, one of the top things is to show my boys, man, you move forward, you move on. This isn't it, and this wasn't our choice. It wasn't our choice to be here. It wasn't our choice to leave. And we're here to live the best that we possibly can. And as we spoke earlier, when you help somebody else, you help yourself. And that just, to me, is what resonated with this whole tragedy.
One thing that's incredibly difficult, but I think it's crucial that you just touched on, is you also have to accept it. You have to accept it as a part of life. Like, a lot of people will mourn and stay in despair and live in that empty feeling forever because they don't want to accept that it is the reality. It is the cards that they've been dealt. Like, I got the exact same phone call that you did. My father, you know, I got called down to the office. I was at school when my girlfriend passed away. And, you know, I got the same, hey, you need to come outside. And I walked out the parking lot like, what? This is the middle of a school day. What's going on? And,
Right.
and then my dad told me, and that, that moment is just, you can only understand those words. You can't articulate it correctly unless you've gone through something like that.
Yes.
But I can say that in healing and in hearing what you're saying, acceptance has to come into the picture. You have to accept that, you know what, this is the story that I'm living, and I have to find a way to pick myself back up and go on and rebuild. And like you said, there can be a better foundation. I mean, for as much tragedy as I've experienced, I feel like I have the other side of life as well. And, it's a choice. It's just a very painful one.
Yes.
And, and like you said, there's an honoring to it. You can look back and be so thankful for the time that you did share with certain people and for the memories that you'll have forever that nobody can take for you.
Right.
That's your story forever. All those, that guy that saw you jump off the horse and got your shoes in the mud, like that memory will always be
Right.
with you.
Yeah.
So I think acceptance is a really difficult thing, a very painful thing.
Yes.
But I think it's crucial.
Yes. It doesn't necessarily take the pain away, but to draw understanding, you can pick apart all you want as to the whys. You'll never have that answer. You'll never have it. And so you just kind of go, okay, not going to have it. This is what, in my head, which has made it, reasoning behind it, if you want to, even go there. But it's just, for me, there weren't signs. There was nothing to get this call. It was like, when someone else, we had heard about another gentleman that had committed suicide and prior to Todd's death. And, he was like, how could they leave their family? How could they do this and that? But the problem is that you don't realize what the mind is doing. You don't realize the black hole that they're in, and all they can focus on, I have this vision because of another young person that is in the family that through being so open, talking about Todd's suicide and the grief and the despair, I know of 2 young people that had their own planned that had asked for help afterwards. I didn't think about this happening to the family because you're encompassed in dark. How do you see outside of that? Until somebody's like, no, this is temporary. This can be temporary. You have to look for help and you have to ask for help because nobody knows what's going on inside of your head. You've got this repertoire that goes on, but until you, when you say it out loud, when you actually, yes, I was thinking about killing myself, or actually saying it, that gives it legs. And then you the way it's been described to me, no, I've not been in that position. But by giving it life, I think, other than outside the head, then it's like, that is not the way. You just don't understand what you're doing to the people that you're leaving behind. And it is quite devastating for some. And not that it wasn't for me, but it, like I said, I feel like a lot of the work that I did prior to, oddly enough, prepared me to move where I am today. And, life can be good if you let it. That's one of my lines,
I love what you just said about the mind has a lot of intangibles. There's a lot of information just floating around in there, creeping in dark spaces or great things. But when you can get it out of the mind and either speak into the world or even just write it down, it becomes like a problem. It becomes like an algorithm that you have to solve. And when you look at it, you can solve it. It's just when it's in there and you're not giving it attention, it might be manifesting to be worse and worse and worse and growing until the point where it can be disastrous. You have to get that stuff out and you have to lay it out on paper, which is the same thing you want to do for your life. If you want to turn your life around, get it on paper, put your goals down, and then get this thing moving. So let's start building the recovery path. After that happened, you have a period of darkness and having to reflect on your life and everything that's going on. When do you start to see the light again? What are the things that you felt really were crucial? Like the first couple steps when you went, you know what, I'm going to be okay. What did those look like, or what just circumstances were they for other people that might be in that dark place still?
Well, so the first thing that I want to say before I forget is that, people ask, what do I say? What can I do to help this person? There's really nothing you can say. The greatest gift that was given to me was by my sister. She came and stayed with us in the house, and it was being present. And, 1 minute you want to talk about it, the next minute it's like, I don't want to talk about it. So if people ask you to talk about it, that is a trigger. That is, it was for me an anger moment. Don't ask me to talk about it. I want to talk about it. Now you wait 2 minutes and all I want to do is talk about it. So what Debbie did is she was just present. And so I might come walking out from getting a cup of coffee and just kind of start talking. And she would put down whatever she did, and she was just present, eye to eye, listen. And at one point she said, do you want a response? And I said, no. And she goes, okay. And so a lot of times, for me personally, in that pain moment, I just needed to get it out, is what it was. I needed somebody to listen and not somebody to fix it. You're not going to fix it. No matter the greatest words that you come up to talk to this person, you're not going to fix it. So my biggest part of advice to anyone in support is food and just to be present. You don't even have to say anything.
Just show that you care.
Just, I'm there. I had another good friend, Sarah Barnwell. She would send me a heart, texting. All she did was send a heart. I knew she was thinking about me, and that was, I don't want to talk, but, and I just send back, thank you. And it was just that. I'm thinking about you, because you'll hit a point where everybody's there for help, and then not so much. I don't know if they get to a point where you worry that you burden them talking about it. That was in me. And then when I would talk about it, friends would be like, no, it's fine. I can remember being out when we talk about honoring it, part of my feeling for healing is to honor where you're at. And I had gotten an email pertaining to some other crap, and it was just kind of, I had just kind of hit the wall that day. And we're out I'm golfing with my girlfriend and her sister-in-law. And I've been trying to keep myself contained. Well, that's when it's toxic, because you're trying to bury it. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, you know what? I'm with good friends. It's okay. So I just start to cry quietly, but I'm crying. And I could see them out of the corner of my eye kind of looking at each other like, oh, hell, what are we going to do now? And they came over and they said, do you want to go home? And I said, no, I just need 5 minutes. I'm going to skip the next hole. I just need 5 minutes. And I allowed myself to cry. Next hole, I skipped the one hole, went to the next hole. I'm still crying. I tee off. I whacked that ball, and I went, there. Okay, I'm good. And it was gone. But if I had continued to try to not cry, it would have gone for the rest of the damn night till I got home. Why? It's like, let it out, let it go. And it's the release. Even if it's anger, release it. And it's just, punch something, preferably not someone, unless you're in your gym. But, it just, and I don't know. It just, for me, that was part of the healing. And recognizing how energy, good or bad, can be good or bad. Again, you can't bury it. It'll come out in some way, shape, or form, as my pneumonia did. So it just took time for that. And when, as soon as Todd died, Jake and Allie, my oldest son and his now wife, moved into the house. Ben was there going to school, my younger son. And I wanted everybody under the roof. I wanted to be able to watch somebody, especially with as a death like suicide. It's not like a car accident, suicide's its own beast. And I was terrified that by Todd committing suicide, that was a thumbs up. It was an answer. And I wanted to make sure that it was this is not an answer. It's like, and Todd was my, partner, my best friend, my husband for that length of time. As hard as that was, I can't even fathom if it was my son or either. I mean, it's its own, I don't know. It's even hard to describe that, but it is a shift. So, and even though, people say I understand, no, everybody, even if your story is the same, you do understand part of it, but everybody's in a different position. He was my partner. He wasn't my father. Or, if it goes into mother or anything like that. So it's a different aspect of it. But the best thing that I was able to do is by move everybody in, and we could watch each other there would be times I'd be having a bad day, and Ben would be right on my heels. You okay? And I'm like, you stop, and then I'm like, no. And it's okay to admit. It's okay not to be okay. And, we were there for each other. And it's just, it's been, like I said, over 2 years, short time in some aspects, long time, long dog years in other aspects. But we're all doing really good. We've all had bad moments. We've all had good. Another part of my healing was to travel. I was fortunate enough to where I could just take off and go. I did an excursion in Italy to where I kayaked the Cinque Terre coast, and it was all women, and there was 5 of us. And that's where I met a very close friend of mine, Kristen Miller. And she was experiencing loss through a divorce. And when we were talking, she said, well, she's sad too, but it's for different. It's not the same. And I go, did life as you know take a 180 in a hot second? And she said, yes. And I said, it's the same. It's a loss. I don't care if it's, that's more of a living death, a divorce, versus, Todd just being gone. So we really formed this really unique friendship and kayaked almost the whole trip together. They were tandem kayaks. And she's in Connecticut, and we just, I ended up, driving out to Connecticut there. We went up into Maine. We went to Charleston, South. We just did these really spur of the moment, awesome trips together, and we just traveled really well together. And we decided to write a book. And the book is pretty much done except for editing. But we hit a point, it was just before the holidays, like last year, about this time, where we had to start doing the editing. And I'm like, I just can't go through this right now. It has to sit for a little bit. We got to get going back on it again to finish it. But it's called And Just Like That, Overcoming Despair. Because the sorrow, it might not be anything that you fully, we talked about this earlier, the hole that's left, the hole in your heart. The hole's there. There's a picture of, here's the hole. It doesn't go away. You just build life around it. And it's been, like I said, our friendship, Kristen and I, has been amazing, and to, follow, as we're healing. And I think the book's really, we'll get there. I'll get my act going. But it's just, I need to get back at it and edit it. But it's all kind of how we saw about healing and how we did it differently. And even though circumstances might be different, sadness is sadness. There's different degrees, obviously, but it doesn't have to be the end all. And it's knowing, by God, get up and get dressed today. Okay. Now you got dressed, take a shower. It's like, it's baby steps. They're monumental, man, at the beginning. But, and it's okay. Everything is okay. It's going to be okay. Allow it to be okay. And make an honest effort to pursue the happiness.
I also feel that the strongest people that I know in life are people that have gone through extreme tragedy or difficulties like that, because you find resilience within yourself and you find strength that you didn't even think you had. So you'll just, and then all of a sudden your spectrum of life is so much wider. What someone would consider a terrible day doesn't even register to anywhere near what you would classify as a terrible day.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you have truly, in a weird way, a more beautiful perspective on life.
Yes. Because
you understand what good and bad truly is now.
Well, it is. And it was even, so stepping back into the dating world. Oh my God. Okay. So when I met Todd, phones were still attached to the wall. It's like, for Christ's sake, you get these stupid apps, and it's just, and I was so over it. And I'm like, this is stupid. And, but how else do you meet somebody? But I had set things that it was like, okay, first off, my kids will always come first. If that's a problem, walk away. My kids live with me. If that's a problem, walk away. And guess what? Todd's was part of my life for 33 years. It doesn't go away. I am who I am today, and I kind of like who I am. And so, that won't go away, and I honor him in every day that I possibly can, in memory. So, but the key to that was too, also, it's not that I didn't, that I loved Todd any less. It's the fact that I knew how good a partnership could be, and I loved being married. I loved being part of a partnership. I knew how good it could be, and I wanted it again. And I wasn't about to settle for anything less. And so, that can be a touchy situation for everybody. But again, people's opinions don't matter. What is right in your heart, what is right for you, and if you follow that, and I use the word honor a lot, but that is the only way I can put it, it'll be okay, and it's also happiness. I had the highest high of happiness, 2 amazing sons, amazing partner in life, and to me, our success, the best part of it was being able to go out into the community and help wherever I possibly could. With the Rotary, as part of the Livingston Sunrise Rotary in Howell. I started out in Brighton and then went to that one. And it's, a service above self. And that's, I laugh about it because you hit a point where I'm like, yeah, I'm not feeling that right now. So I'm going to step back a little bit. But it's when you give back, and I think that when you help others, that is precedence to helping your own healing and moving forward with it. And Todd was a master of it. He had Josh Parisian under his wing a long time ago, and he was considered him one of his kids. And you go, into the dealership, and it was just, he had so many that he helped and groomed and mentored. And, part of other things that were going on, he forgot to take care of himself. And, and so when you realize that self-care is not selfish, it's a necessity. Because if you strengthen what you have, then you can step forward and help others. And I think that's where a lot of it lies, in my healing.
Let's talk a little bit about exactly what your life looks like now then, because you've kind of built the story to this point. What are your current involvements in the community? What are your goals? What do you hope to accomplish in the next couple of years? What places are you working at? Like just really let's take it to now, because you've built the story. You've showed that you're a survivor and that you're someone with resilience and perseverance. And life has new beginnings. You're opening new chapters every day now.
Yes,
what does that look like?
So after Todd's death, as I stated with the Rotary, service above self didn't resonate so much because I felt that I needed to reground. I needed to take care of family along with myself. Took the time with that. I really stepped back. I tried to stay in Rotary. I was there for a while, but then my house was for sale that we had built together. We were only living in it. It was our retirement home. We were only in it 6 months when he died. I knew I didn't want to stay there because it was built for us, not me. But I waited for other things to hopefully settle out soon. And so I have found this really sweet piece of property up towards Gladwin, West Branch area. It's 145 acres. Deer blinds, hunting, so the kids are all about that. Log cabin, we have lake access. And it is everything that everything that I want now. So since that changed. I found an incredible man that accepts who I am and the fact that, Todd is part of the equation. He really honors him. Just even, we were talking about the new place up north, and, he's like, pictures of Todd. I don't, he goes, I hope that you put some out, he's just, for me, when I spoke of exactly the type of person that I wanted, as I stated earlier, and it was about one point in time when I stated that, a week later is when I met him. And it was, our first date was 7 hours sitting at a bar, never shutting up. As you can tell, I talk a little bit, but he matched it. And it was just this amazing conversation. And so happiness has been found there. Boys really like him. So moving. So right now within the community, not a whole lot, but I'm looking at what I can do maybe up in the Grayling, or it's not Grayling, it's Gladwin, West Branch area. Reaching Higher is this amazing organization that's here. Have you mentored?
I've mentored twice.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
So I'm looking to see what it would take to get it up into the high school up there. I want horses again, horse barn. Maybe I can get involved with 4-H or mentoring kids with equine therapy. I don't know. It's like it's open. So we're just going to get in there and go. Colin's looking at coaching again. He's a soccer guy. And so it just, it's been a hell of a journey, and to look back and even over the past 2 years, but I'm 54 now. Yeah. And it just, I don't know. It's an incredible timeline. Extremely blessed. I'm so grateful for, friends, family, acquaintances, experiences. It just, I'm excited for the future again. There was one point in time, it's kind of like there didn't feel like there was one at all. So it's, I don't know, it's kind of allowing life to happen and not overthink it and go with your gut. I'm a total instinct person. Even when the first time you and I went to lunch, I had made up my mind about 5 minutes into it that it was like, no, this is going to be really cool. What a neat addition and how we can work forward with that. And I don't know. It's just, it's been a ride.
I can see that there's hope in your eyes, and that's really cool. And like I said, what are the odds that we scheduled this podcast? I had no idea it falls on your son's
Jake's
birthday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you have this newfound hope in the future that life can be. You're doing your first podcast today.
I know, very first. Yes.
First podcast ever. You know what I mean? So it's cool how a lot of times we can't see the future and we don't know if it's going to be beautiful or not. But when we can have hope, when we look back, we can connect certain dots that, it all just falls into play. And at the end of this whole experience, we'll get to look back and value the good and remember the bad. And it just makes the story.
It's all part of it. And you can't have one without the other.
Yep. And you can appreciate one much more when you
Big
experience
time.
the other.
Yeah. Especially close friends. It's interesting because when you go through something like this, there's people that you think, oh yeah, they'll be there, and they don't, and they step back. And then you have acquaintances that step up beyond imagination. But that's everybody else's path and choice. Maybe there's something that happened that makes them uncomfortable with the way that I'm so open about it, and that's okay. Again, the talking about it, even like we're doing today, if it hits one set of ears and makes somebody rethink, wait that 30 seconds. Awesome.
And if we can just normalize these conversations more, everybody struggles in life. And when you only have a small spectrum of what you understand to be struggle, that could feel as hopeless as what someone who has encountered the worst circumstances feel, because it's just a feeling of emotion. So someone that their life may only have had little challenges, but they get hit with something mid-level, to them, they're devastated.
Yeah.
They're absolutely crushed. So the more that we can just realize, regardless of how your brain categorizes the experience, we're all human beings experiencing these emotions. And when we connect on this emotional level, we can do better to help each other.
Well, it is. And even Jake shared with me that Jocko, good. That is so powerful to me. And it was kind of like, yeah, all right. Give yourself time to redo, regroup. What do you really want? How, I don't know. Again, I keep going back for helping people, but it's just, I've met absolute strangers in Kensington, and we end up having this conversation. And of course, when, you're a widow at this age, how did your husband die? That always asks. And I'm like, suicide. It always, when I'm in the back of my head, when I'm kind of kicked to talk about it, the conversation goes in such a way that, at the end of this conversation that I had with a guy at Kensington, he was an older gentleman. He was quite lonely. He was walking, and we were talking about all this stuff. And when I mentioned that, he was like, well, my uncle, the problem with suicide is that when you've been exposed to it, it actually increases your chance of doing it, not the opposite. I'm the opposite. I went the opposite way. It's like, there's no fucking way that's going to happen. So talking to this gentleman, he got really teary-eyed, and we talked about it and kind of what his situation was. And when the loneliness came out, I go, there's walking groups here. I said, why don't you look up, you need to join something. You need a companion, find your tribe. And that's a whole nother poem, but with tribe. But it just, and you protect it fiercely. And you find it. And it doesn't have to be blood. We had, after Todd's situation, I lost half my family, and so I've got, my side, my strength, and it's just the need. I'm going to go back. One of the most awesome thing that happened in 2020, as crazy as 2020's been, it's been pretty cool in some aspects. When Jake and Allie got married, I actually did the ceremony in the back property. So I had the time and the honor to prepare the ceremony and just reflect on it. And it's just, even talking about it, it's like, oh, it was absolutely incredible. And a gift. It started out as a joke, because when we were looking at the venue, Ben was the best man. Obviously, Jake and Allie get married, and I'm the fourth one going, I want to be up there too. I don't want to sit by myself here. And I jokingly said something about, well, maybe I'll marry you and then I'll be up there too. And Allie said, would you? And I said, check with your family. I don't need to step on toes right now, but yeah, I'd love to. So yeah, got ordained by the Church of What's Happening Now, and whatever.
Yeah, and that's the opposite spectrum of life. Those are those beautiful moments. That powerful moment will resonate with you until the end of your life.
Yes.
The same way that the negative ones can. So we just got to keep pushing on and knowing that, even if your shoes get a little bit muddy, they can be washed.
They can be washed.
And life can be beautiful again.
Yeah.
Well, Heather, just anything else that you want to capture on video today, any message that you'd want to leave for people, a quote that's resonated with you, really just anything. This has been an absolutely stellar podcast, and then we'll wrap this up. Just anything that you want to leave in this glimpse in time.
So my biggest thing is try not to hang on to people that are toxic. If they're not bringing you joy, they don't need to be around you, and it's okay to step away. And it's okay to do what's good for you. People's opinion is none of your business. It's a hard one for me. It always has been. But I've really learned that well. Love those that are close to you. Don't go to bed angry. It's not worth it. It's okay to say sorry. You won't lose your soul. And accept responsibility when you can. And don't try and figure out if, even with Todd, people would say it's not your fault, and I'm like, well, no, it's not my fault. It was his choice. It's just. But I don't know how I had the attitude to begin with. You can't fix what's been done. You can only take and learn from it and move forward. And to me, it's all about moving forward. You might fall back every now and then, but then take that step backwards and take two more. And love hard, live hard. Enjoy, even on the hard times. What is it to learn, and what can we do to move forward? And I thank you very much for having me today. This has been fun.
No, of course. So anyone that listens to this, if you're going through tough times, or if suicide's hit your life hard, I'm sure that I speak for Heather as well when I say, feel free to reach out to me, send me a message. I've been rocked twice in my life by suicide. It was a huge part of my story, and it is a part of why I am the man I am today. And a lot of people don't know my story, and they might see a certain level of strength that I'm able to live this life in, but they don't know that it's come through a lot of forging myself into that person. And you're the same way. So I'm sure, you would agree with the fact that, if someone's struggling, reach out.
Yeah.
What might seem like a stranger might change your life. So. Oh,
absolutely. Yeah. And that's why, I try to leave everybody better than when you first met them. Even if it's, hey, how you doing? Yeah, I'm good. And that's people. The tendency to lead a conversation is, how are you? Man, if you don't want to know, don't ask, because, today sucks. And people usually, when you respond with that, people go, ugh, okay, I got to go this way. I'm out of here. So and so I have always led with that. And I will stand there and be late for whatever I've got next if you need to talk about something. And that's where I think people need to open up. We've gotten to such a cyber area, and you can text and say whatever you want and not have accountability for it. Well, would you really say that to that person if you were face to face? So when I have, believe me, there's plenty of times that it's been, how are you today? And then people are like, they start talking. I do what my sister did. I stop and I'm present. I'm really sorry to hear that.
I'll give you a perfect example. I went into Big B yesterday, and one of the women that's gotten me coffee for probably a year now, every time I go in there, she's, I think, in her mid 40s. And every time I go in there, she's always so enthusiastic. She's great customer service. She smiles. Regardless, you would never know what could be going on in her life or not, because she always just shows up and gives her best, right? She was super, like, I could just feel a different energy when I went in there yesterday. And I was like, hey, Dawn, is everything okay? And she's like, no, I have to leave this company. Me and management don't see eye to eye. And like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm so stressed. Like, and I'm thinking like, man, like, you're someone that might not know that from the outside perspective, like, you're brightening people's days every
day.
moment of the day. Just an interaction with you could be setting off people to have a much better day across the board. So I made a post yesterday, and then multiple business owners in the community, friends of mine that manage big companies, have now reached out or are talking to her about opportunities, because I'm like, listen, it's hard to find those people that no matter what is going on, they show up, they give their absolute best, and they brighten the world around them. You know what I mean?
That is not a commonality today.
No. And so I appreciate those people. That's why when I saw that, I was like, you know what? If there's any way that I can help this woman, we need to push that is a better way to be in this life. You know what I mean? So support those people. I hope everybody enjoyed listening today. And again, thank you for tuning in. And we'll wrap this up.